Hey, welcome to this week's group content. We're in a new series called Under Pressure. And this past week, I did a message talking about being overwhelmed. And so I want to continue on that tonight. So are you overwhelmed? We all reach a point where we realize our limited human capacity is maxed out and we need help. And fortunately, our Father is in control, even when we feel that everything is wildly spinning out of control. See, only God can turn a mess into a miracle. And we've seen Jesus pray in the middle of the mess for the miracle on the other side. Because Jesus prayed, prayer should be our starting point also. Prayer should be our first choice when we feel overwhelmed, not our last resort. Jesus was fully God and fully human. His experience in the Garden of Gethsemane is an excellent picture of both of those realities. There we see Jesus under this incredible stress. When Jesus prayed, "Not my will, but yours," it wasn't a generic statement saying, "Do whatever you want because you're God and I'll be okay with that." Jesus wasn't afraid to ask for what he wanted. He wasn't leaving himself an out in case God didn't answer the prayer the way he wanted. Jesus was God. He knew exactly what was ahead. He knew the hour was near for betrayal, beating, crucifixion, and spiritual separation from God under the crushing weight of our sin and death. That was the will of God. That was the way God was bringing peace to people. God's plan was bigger than just Jesus's desires in that moment, and he knew it. Jesus prayed, "Not my will, but yours," because he trusted his heavenly Father. Jesus knew he was only hours away from the most intense physical and spiritual burden possible. His pain was unimaginable. See, Jesus was facing God's holy wrath, taking all human sin on himself at the cross. He was about to willingly experience the punishment for our sin and be separated from God for the first time and the only time in all of history. Jesus was taking the full weight of our guilt and shame on himself. When you pray, you turn yourself off the problem and towards the solution, which is God. We need to remember how big our God is. See, because Jesus was fully human, he can identify with us in every way. While on earth, he faced temptations, trials, and suffering of every kind. In Hebrews 4, verses 14 through 16, it says he endured sorrow, he endured stress, and even being overwhelmed. In Matthew 26, 36 through 46, we read there, it says, "Then Jesus went with his disciples to a place called Gethsemane, and he said to them, 'Sit here while I go over there and pray.' He took Peter and the two sons of Zebedee along with him, and he began to be sorrowful and troubled. Then he said to them, 'My soul is overwhelmed with sorrow to the point of death. Stay here and keep watch with me.' Going a little farther, he fell with his face to the ground and prayed, 'My Father, if it is possible, may this cup be taken from me. Yet not as I will, but as you will.' Then he returned to his disciples and found them sleeping. 'Couldn't you men keep watch with me for 1 more hour?' He asked Peter. 'Watch and pray so that you will not fall into temptation. The spirit is willing, but the flesh is weak.' He went away a second time and prayed, 'My Father, if it is possible for this cup to be taken away, unless I drink it, may your will be done.' When he came back, he again found them sleeping, because their eyes were heavy. So he left them and went away once more and prayed the third time, saying the same thing. Then he returned to his disciples and said to them, 'Are you still sleeping and resting? Look, the hour is near, and the Son of Man is delivered into the hands of sinners. Rise, let us go. Here comes my betrayer.'" And this is intense language. Have you ever prayed that hard? You know how hard it is to sometimes put everything you're feeling into words. See, the same thing can be true when reading the Bible. The emotional power of the original language can literally get lost in translation. For example, in this part of the Bible, it was first written in Greek, and the word here is perilupos. In Matthew 26:38, it's translated the following ways in our English Bibles: overwhelmed with sorrow in the NIV, very sorrowful in the ESV, deeply grieved in the NASB, crushed with grief in the NLT, swallowed up in sorrow in the HCSB. That's a lot of emotion that's packed into that little word. See, Jesus was overwhelmed with, crushed with, very full of, and swallowed up in deeply intense feelings. We can identify with that kind of emotion. I think we've all felt completely overwhelmed in every way. And for me, it's encouraging to know these feelings aren't a sign of weakness or failure. After all, Jesus was perfect and completely obedient to his Father, yet he reached a point of being overwhelmed. Jesus was overwhelmed, so we don't need to beat ourselves up for feeling like we've reached the end of our rope. If we follow him through our stress. When it comes to prayer, important may not be a strong enough word. We desperately need prayer when we're overwhelmed. Notice that Jesus prayed by himself. He found a place to be alone, undisturbed, and focused on getting brutally honest with God. That's what I love about reading in the Psalms. We get to see David's honesty there. So we never want to let a problem intimidate us. We want to let it motivate us to pray more. Let it motivate us to trust more, to act more, to depend on God more. Let it be motivating, not an intimidating thing in our lives. Each of us needs to turn to God for help. So I want to close with this quote from Corrie ten Boom that I used in my message this week, where she says, "If you look at the world, you'll be distressed. If you look within, you'll be depressed. But if you look at Christ, you'll be at rest." Remember, prayer should be your first choice when you feel overwhelmed, not your last resort. Thanks for spending some time with me. I hope you enjoy your group discussion. God bless you.